Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have our two lovely guests, Dmitri, who is an ESFJ, and Denzel, who is an ENFJ. So Denzel, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
My name is Denzel Mensah. I'm an ENFJ. I'm a life/personal development/relationship coach. Been studying Myers-Briggs since 2014. And I'm actually a classmate with Joyce from Personality Hacker. Personality Hacker's profiler training. I'm a Christian.
Excellent. And Dmitri, would you like to give a few words about yourself?
So my name is Dmitri Scheerer. I'm an ESFJ. I found that out about a year ago. Yeah, found that out. New to typing. I work with Personality Hacker. My aunt and uncle are actually the owners and the people that are in it. So I've been working with them, and I know Joyce and Denzel both personally because of Personality Hacker. So it's been a blessing. And just a few months ago, they are some of the fellow students that got me into typing a little hardcore. So I'm over here trying my best, trying to learn how to type, and I can't even watch shows without typing. So it's very fun.
It's an affliction.
Yeah, so thanks. Appreciate that.
Dmitri, you remind me of the YouTuber Johnny Awesome. He's also an FE Dom, so he's a gamer. And just thought I'd throw that out there. So today we'll talk about the differences between the ESFJ and the ENFJ. Denzel, would you like to start us off with some things that you noticed that are a little different about you and ESFJs?
Yeah, sure. For those who don't know, we both lead with the same function, ESFJs and ENFJs. So we both lead with extroverted feeling, FE, also known as harmony. And the way that I personally describe it is knowing the exact buttons to push in the exact order to get a desired emotional reaction from a group of people or from an individual. And it's also like getting people's needs met, and just it's like a sociograph of like understanding who is related to what. So like knowing my dynamic with Joyce versus knowing my dynamic with Dmitri versus knowing Dimitri's dynamic with Joyce, and like understanding the nuance of interpersonal dynamics, because a lot of people talk about like how like FI is deep, and it is, but then they'll like say in contrast FE is shallow, which is half true, half not, because FE, when it comes to emotional depth, I would say that it is shallow, but when it comes to interpersonal depth, that's where it's very, very rich. Like I understand like the difference between not just the binary platonic and romantic dynamic, but like, oh, wait a minute, like there's just like a lot more layers there. So I see ESFJs like, having like a very similar or exact same like type of process with that. But then what flavors it is our auxiliary function. So for me as an NI user, I see things in a much more like abstract manner, a lot less concrete. I'm very prone to using like metaphor to an analogy in order to explain the things that I'm trying to say. And it's not something that I actively try to think of, but it's just the way that I communicate, because I think in abstract images, metaphors, pictures, and all of that. And it's like, okay, how can I bring this from up there to communicate it and expel it in a manner that will actually make sense to people, versus with the ESFJs that I've seen, like they're more like straightforward, more concrete with their speech, and you don't have to use metaphor and all of that. They can, but that would be more of something that, like, from what I've noticed at least, that it's something that they'd have fun playing with, and it's not like a necessity for them. But that also comes from their extroverted intuition, because they have auxiliary SI, or introverted sensing memory, while I have auxiliary introverted intuition, or perspectives. And then lastly, the tertiary, I have extroverted sensation, or SE, and they have extroverted intuition. And so for them, I've seen like they're more rapid with how they speak, in my opinion. This is what Jamila noticed.
Sure.
Like they can speak like very quickly and like without like pausing as much, if anything. Whereas with me, due to YouTube, I've like practiced not pausing as much, but even then I get like comments all the time. They're like, Denzel, you talk so slow. I'm like, dang, I'm working on it, But I have to like really like think back and process how this is coming out. And I think it's because I don't speak in a concrete manner. And so I try to like keep from veering off too much on the abstract ladder. And I'm assessing like, okay, how's my audience going to take this and all of that. And it's a very like NI thing. Whereas with NE being tertiary for ESFJs, I've seen that they can just like vomit a lot of different stuff and like their ideas are like going off. And sometimes they can even be mistaken for ENFPs because ENFPs have a very similar dynamic with them. And ESFJs can actually seem quite intuitive a lot of times. And so there's that. And then lastly, we have the same inferior function of introverted thinking, which when it's unhealthy, it's the stereotypical, I was just trying to protect you kind of thing, like the truth. Whereas like, you know, you're valuing not even tact, but you're just valuing like keeping the truth or withholding truth and information from people in order to protect them, in order to protect the dynamic, in order to keep the peace, versus actually saying your truth and what you actually believe aside from the collective. And so when it is actually healthy, then I've seen EFJs be able to deliver not only the truth, but their own truth and their own critical thoughts of things in a manner that's still tactful and palatable for people to be able to accept and receive. So yeah, that's a spitball foundation.
You mentioned really good points, Denzel. ESFJs in their speech pattern will be more talking about the concrete thing. It's more about certainties and what is trustable. So they'll reference actual stuff. Whereas like Denzel as an ENFJ, you'll include more metaphors, analogies, what is complex and unknown. So the unseeable in your speech pattern. And so that's a big difference. And I really liked how you described FE, Denzel. Yeah, it's like understanding the nuances to meeting people's needs. So that is also understanding relationships too in their full depth. So I completely agree with that. And yes, ESFJs tend to mistype as ENFPs, and they seem like it. Like it's very easy to get confused with each other, surprisingly. But I've seen that too in my life.
ENTPs as well, because they have the same functions.
Yes, absolutely. And you also mentioned this great point about how with NI, it tends to be a tiny bit slower than NE. Like I'm also kind of slow with how I talk and process things because I want to sink completely into an idea. Like I want to slowly like let the truth reveal itself, and it takes a little bit of time. Whereas like NE, it seems to like grab from the SI archives, and it's easier to access and to say things. I'd say that's generally true. I'm not saying everyone, but I also see that to be the case too. So Dmitri, do you see any differences between you and ENFJs?
I'm not going to go too hard on the typing part. That's why the ESFJ just sits back and lets you guys talk. That's pretty much how that works. The differences that I've seen in an ESFJ and ENFJ, especially like at the live events, because I'm pretty sure that Denzel is actually the same type as my best friend back in high school, which is very interesting because when I first met him, I couldn't obviously I didn't know typing then, but then once I started learning typing and I started interacting with him back in LA, I started seeing the same kind of, I don't know, the manners that he had. He was very suave and just like how he talked and everything. And I was like, man, he reminds me of my best friend so much. And I think we interact really good together, especially me and him. Like, it's like we feed off each other in a way. And when he in the dynamic where he was in a formal dynamic, I'm gonna let him go off. Like that's what he does. He just talks and goes off and just, that's him. It's cool. I love it because I can sit back and I can start learning. I just take in that information. But then I don't want to say my own opinions or anything like that because, like we talked about, that's my FE. I'm just like, nah, I'm all right. I'm gonna let you all talk about this. But when you flip the scenario, like if it's a party or something like that, I'm gonna go in and start dancing, having a good time, And that when he was talking about when you go into a room and you start reading the room, he goes slower with it and starts getting to know like each person almost individually. That's what he does. He likes to go up, meet everybody formally almost, right? I mean, it's like you like to really get to know, but for me, I just jump right in. Like I like to meet a whole group at the same time. And then that's my mistake, because then I don't get the names right. And I'm just like, oh, what's your name again? Like, well, I don't get to have that personal relationship unless I'm actually going up to them. So I'm like that really fun party guy who likes to have a good time and, make sure and I like to make sure that everyone's having a good time. If somebody's over in the corner, just like, I'm okay, or having a drink or something like that. I'm that kind of guy, that person that will walk up, but I'm sure Denzel's the same way. Denzel will look over there and then he'll try to spark up a conversation, because that's all it takes. You walk up, you talk to the person, and then you get them going, especially if it's, someone who's very shy and introverted and doesn't want to be around people, So, and that's, difficult. I understand. So it's been very interesting to see also the different types in, the live events as well, to see what you interact with and, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word I'm looking for. But we were also talking about, me and Denzel were also talking about relationship types, and how what he's attracted to and what I'm attracted to, both relationship and friendship. And so I started to do that, where I started to outline all of my friends. I would put all my friends onto a piece of paper, and then I'd actually start typing them. And a lot of them were almost the same type. A lot of them, my best friend in California, the reason why we're so close and why we click so well is that she's an ESFJ. But the problem is I could never date her. I can't date my same type. I can't do it. But we're just that great of friends though. So it's definitely very interesting. I haven't seen a lot of differences because I'm still learning type. But it's definitely been a lot of fun seeing the differences in people, because I took psychology in high school, but this is like a microscope of psychology. Like this is a really hard view of like how everyone clicks, so I find that absolutely interesting.
Yeah.
So I went a little off there for a second. I apologize. I was a little.
It's all related. It's totally good. So Dmitri, you had a really good point where you talked about how you sit back when the conversation gets too abstract and you let people talk about their abstraction together. Whereas I think an ENFJ would chime in with their abstraction and it'd just be intuiting it out with other intuitives. Whereas with the ESFJ, they're more likely to let people do their thing and they can watch. It seems to what I got from what you said.
From what I get, I think that those memes where it's what would each type be doing at the party or whatever. In my opinion, I see the ENFJ as the one who's leading or facilitating those types of conversations. Even though I'm not the dominant, I don't really see the INFJ being the one who's taking lead, but more so just engaging very deeply in that conversation. The ENFPs, they're not really going to take lead. They're just going to also be engaging because they're just throwing in their pieces. The ENTPs kind of going to be like the ENPs and everything, but being the only FE Dom intuitive, then it's okay, I'm focused on everybody's inclusion. I'm thinking, okay, what conversation will actually appeal to most people, if not everyone here? And then how can we facilitate the conversation in a manner where everybody's gonna be able to have a piece and we can all engage in it. And so I would definitely see myself as the facilitator. And when I say facilitator, it's not even I'm the main person that's speaking, but I'd be the main person that's Joyce, what do you think? Or what do you think about that? Or I could be the one who throws in the questions here and there. I'll throw in my piece, what I think here and there as well. So
yeah. I was gonna say if it's a party, he's the one that's gonna keep the conversation going, and I'm gonna be the one serving drinks. Because that's how that works. And then when I sit down, I'll if it's a small group, I'm the kind of person that will share my opinion if I'm comfortable and knowing that everyone else is sharing their opinion and comfortable. But if it's a bigger group and everyone has their own opinions, it's very hard for me to say them because I don't want to be too insensitive to whatever the subject may be, So that's how I was actually thinking about that the past couple nights when you were talking about setting this up. the differences. And I was thinking about, like, if we had a party, if me and him hosted, he's the one that would keep the conversations going, and I'd still be setting everybody up with something, making sure everyone's needs are met, So
bringing all the cookies, the birthday cake.
That's right. Birthday cake. Woo!
And if we're being honest too, Dmitri's actually way funnier than I am. Like I tried to be. Yes, he is. I'm not just saying.
This guy.
I try to be funny, and I'm like witty in the sense that I have like funny things that I can say here and there, and like quips and all of that. But Dmitri is like, I can tell that me and him have different styles, senses of humor. Like, and when I was hanging out with him at the live event, we were hanging because we roomed together, and there was just so many jokes that like Dmitri would just randomly come up with that it reminded me actually of my younger sister who's INFP. And when I was younger, I had like a similar dynamic with her, because it's like, wait, how the heck did you come up with that joke? Like, it's just so out there, but like, I thought it to be so funny. And then like, I would like try to like imitate that in a way. And because now I know like it's coming from an NE type of sense of humor, it's like my imitation of that doesn't do it as much justice as like hers, or especially like Dmitri's. It's like Dmitri, like he was like talking about like, oh, like I'm suave or whatever. Dmitri has that to him too. So there's also that. He's definitely smooth, but like his is like the I think it's really like if you look at the difference between an ENTP and an ESTP, kind of. Like an ESTP, I guess, is like more just like, I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain it, but like the way that you would just have to see Dmitri like in action. Like he can just like say things that like, he's just a charmer in the sense of like making people laugh all around him. Like he's the type of person that you'll walk in and you'll hear him say the end of a joke, like, and then I said, blah, 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 and he'll like make some type of imitation and everyone's like, ah, and then he's just like sitting there like, kind of thing, Whereas like for me, if I'm in the middle of conversation with someone and maybe like Joyce says something right now, then I'll probably say something like, oh yeah, because this is that. And most of my jokes go over people's heads because Jamila, as the way that she says it, is like, Denzel, that's because you, like my sense of humor is like, I laugh at myself. So like, she's like, yeah, Denzel, like you just think you're so intelligent, So like if people didn't get it, then it's like, they missed it, but oh well. Whereas like with Dmitri, I guess it comes with also like that more sensory type of humor. So it's like, or like that just straightforward. So like you just know that this is meant to be funny in a way. I don't know if I explained all of that like well enough, but that was also something that I really easily identified when I was hanging out with Dmitri. Like, dang, this guy is funny. And I'm funny too, but like his funny is different. Like you will laugh more often with Dmitri than you would with me.
The one thing that's the same about us though, that he was saying the difference. The one thing that's the same about us is that no matter what, we both can break the silence.
Oh yeah.
In anything, in any situation or dynamic, it doesn't matter if it's awkward or anybody just not talking. We're gonna break the silence. Like, obviously we're gonna have a difference of ways, but we're gonna break it because it's uncomfortable for us.
I wouldn't say so. Actually,
really?
I can break the silence.
But is it uncomfortable for you when it is silent?
No.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, for me it's not. I even like have a video like called Silence is, I forgot what it is. Like silence doesn't have to be awkward or something like that. And in the beginning of the video, I actually did this really dramatic thing where I just stared into the camera for like a minute. And then I was like, was that awkward for you? I don't know. Like I did it like some years ago, but it was inspired because I used to get driven to school by my ESFP friend and my INTP friend.
Right.
And whenever the INTP would drive me to school, then it was early in the morning. It's like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And so it would be very silent conversation, like very silent car ride. But I was totally fine. You know, I just stare out the window. I'm just thinking about whatever I'm thinking about. I felt like no type of pressure to say anything to him, especially because it wasn't awkward to me because I knew that he wasn't like thinking, so, you know what I mean? But when I was with my ESFP friend, I could tell that for him, it was silent. It was hard because whenever I'd be silent, then he's like, I feel like we should be talking. So like, so hey, how is this? Or like, you know, he would try to like have a conversation with me, and it didn't necessarily like bother me, but like what made it uncomfortable for me was how uncomfortable he was.
Right.
I can tell that if everybody's like comfortable with the silence, then I don't really feel like a need to break it. Does that make sense?
Is that a one-on-one kind of silence? Because I'm talking like in a sense you're describing a one-on-one kind of thing. What about if it's a group?
If it's a group, that's what I mean. Like what type of silence?
Because one-on-one, I can be silent. I can pretty much shut up and listen to music.
Yeah,
right.
I think that what we're digging to is what makes us uncomfortable. I don't believe that you have a hard time being silent. I think that we're both good at being silent when necessary.
Right.
Right now we're digging.
But what about a group setting?
So in a group setting, again, like it would depend. Like, so I'm like always reading the room. Like if I can sense that in the group, everyone's kind of like if we're all at a dinner table, right?
Right.
And we're just kind of like, so what do we talk about right now? I will break the silence in that instance because I know people want to talk about something. So, hey, I will now think, okay, what is something that if I brought it up, Joyce will have something to say, Dmitri will have something to say, Ashley would have something to say, Antonio would have something to say, and then I would go ahead and be like, hey, so I've been thinking about this or whatever. Whereas I'm guessing with you, you could also do that, but you could even be the type to be like, hey, let's play a game. Like that's how my ESFJ sister-in-law is.
Right.
Like, sees that, then she's like, guys, let's play a game. Like something that'll bring us collectively to like, you know, do something. And then that also breaks the silence. But if we're in a group situation, like maybe like we're just all like hanging out in the house or something, and like nobody's really like talking to each other, but I can see that everyone's like cool. Like I don't sense anyone, like maybe I'm not a mind reader, but often I can read minds, and I can feel when someone is like thinking like, it's awfully silent in here.
You can just feel it.
Yeah.
It's the energy. It's the energy.
Yeah, exactly. Versus when it's like, oh, I haven't even thought about like how quiet it is. And I'm sure that if something important needs to be said, it'll just come up. You know what I mean? And so then I don't really feel like an inclination to pop that silent bubble if everyone else is already cool with it. Does that make
That's interesting. That's cool. So now I'm wondering if the breaking the silence or being okay with the silence has to do with whether or not you're looping as an extrovert. So I think extroverts who are more of their first and their third function will feel like they have to break the silence because they're stuck in this extroverted state. Whereas someone who's more in touch with their auxiliary, like their introverted process, is more okay with the silence being there because they are okay with that balance within themselves. And it's interesting, Dmitri, you mentioned a really cool point I wanted to jump off of, but I totally forgot it. So Dmitri, do you have any other differences you see between you and the ENFJs, you know?
Not really. I don't see big differences. I like to see how we connect. I don't really look at differences for me. I mean, sometimes I do because they're pretty out there, but I like to actually see why I'm attracted to the person. And when I say attracted, I don't mean, sexually. I mean, actually, how we click, that's just how I look at when it comes to relationships, when it comes to friendships, that's like I said, I don't see huge differences, but I mean, I've already said my differences and just a little, minor ones, but
I think I actually really heavily relate to that. I tweeted about that one time. Like there's this there's this like graphic or meme where it was one of those really like lame ones where it's like, okay, follow the line to see what type you are. And then it'll ask questions like, did you get good grades at school? If so, then move to this line. If you didn't, then move to this line, kind of thing. And then for the ENFJ, one thing that I guess like separated them was something, the ENFJ and INFJ, I think. It separated them, was like, are you weird? Or I don't know, it was something. Or like the ENFJ was the only one that was not weird out of the intuitives or something like that. I don't know. I have to go back and look at it. But I remember like there was some people who were like complaining about it. Like one of them was an ENFJ. And she was like, yeah, I'm weird. Or like there was something that came from it. And it automatically like made me think about, why do we have this need to feel like as people, why do we have this need to feel like unique or like different from other people? Like, why do we focus so much on what we don't have alike versus what we do have alike? And what I've realized personally is that FI users, they have a tendency to focus on what they don't have in common with other people, and they somehow connect over that because they find the beauty in that. They're like, oh yeah, well, I'm like this, but I see that you're like that, and that's cool, in your own way, but we're separating in that sense. Whereas with me and Dmitri, I think that I like when we're connecting, we're more prone to be like, whoa, I'm like that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're like looking more for like, what do we have in common? And so when we see things that we don't have in common, it's like, yo, that's really cool, but let's focus on this.
Yeah.
Because that's really like, that's going to be what's connecting us. Like, I know that it's beautiful, like, the things that Dmitri and I don't have in common, but when we're hanging out and stuff like that, it's like what we're focusing on is the things that we do have in common. That's what we find maybe like more beautiful and like more connective. And so whenever I'd find people who were like actively trying to find differences between me and them, then I was just like, I wasn't like necessarily like turned off by it, but I could sense like more and more separation being built. And I'm a very connected person. So it's like, why are we building separation? Whereas maybe for them, that separation was necessary for that connection if they're an FI user in some way. I don't know.
That's really interesting, Denzel. My ENFP friend, she likes to appreciate the unique differences between each individual. There's this one time I saw a game about like where you do like this type of, hand game where you do it with a partner and you're supposed to guess what is on the other person's mind and you say at the same time and see it if you guys are thinking about the same thing. And it creeped out my ENFP so much to have that suggestion of that game to be played because she's like, that is the most creepiest thing ever to like play a game where we have the same thoughts. She's like, what I find beautiful is the differences between us. So I refuse to engage in this game. The thing is, I think that an FI user might relate to the commonality aspect, but they don't realize that what they're appreciating is the fine uniqueness of each person, and they want to keep that distinct in each person. Yeah, I agree, Denzel.
But I do, because of the nature of like type and everything, I have been at least intrigued with the differences between ENFJ, ESFJ. For example, like I have an ENFJ versus ESFJ Venn diagram video that I posted, and I meant to watch it before we got on, refresh my memory with the things that I noticed on there, and then like bring them up, but didn't get around to it. However, I feel like one of the things that I did end up saying on there was how with ESFJs, they focus on more day-to-day things. And Dmitri feel more than free to like, calibrate if necessary, or to be like, no, that's exactly like right. Like, but they're like more on like day-to-day things. And so I think of like Mrs. Incredible, for example, from The Incredibles, where she was pretty much totally fine with not necessarily having to save the world after her and Bob got married and everything. She's like, I just want to focus on my family. Like I just like my way of saving the world is by making sure that my family is okay and I'm doing my part. And if everybody focuses on their family and they kind of like just they just hone in on their small area, focusing on all the details there, then boom. Because ESFJs are detail focused, detail oriented. Whereas for me, like as an ENFJ, I'm big picture focused. And so when you're like honing in on a family, then like when you're so detail focused, then you have to like hone in on like the smaller territory, because then you're able to really like catch everything. Whereas for me, I'm like really thinking big. Like I want to help society in a manner. And so everything that I think about, I escalate it. Like the issues that I think about, I'll realize, like I tweeted something yesterday about how, so I heard this phrase, which was pretty much like, being offended is a choice. And I was like, wow. And the thing is, I actually related to that, because for me, and this could just be an Enneagram 9 thing, but like for me, I've always like had a problem with being like, should I be offended? Should I not be offended? Like if one of you, for example, were to like call me ugly right now, like to tell me like, oh, you know, I personally think that you're ugly. Like I wouldn't be offended by that, because like, oh, well, you know, that's their opinion. Does that suck that that's your opinion? Yeah, but I can't be offended by that. So I'm not gonna like react in a way. So I'm not gonna get angry. And so from that kind of thing, like that's where I started thinking about like, okay, well, like I realized also like I don't really get angry at things because I don't know when it's okay to be angry. I don't know when it's like I have a license or I'm permitted to be angry about a situation. But when it comes to someone else being upset, like, or like if someone else is being bullied or something, I immediately get upset. Like I'm very indignant about things like that. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that that situation at hand that's unfolding right in front of me is not just that situation at hand, but automatically my mind correlates it to something much bigger on a grand scale. Like, oh shoot, yeah, I'm angry, but I realized that this was just a drop that came from an ocean of other situations that are just like this, and this is not okay. So right now, I'm not fighting just so that you can leave her alone right now, or so that this can stop, but I'm trying to fight for the whole ocean, like, of this thing happening. Like, we have to find a way, like, which ocean did this droplet come from, and how can we find a way to cleanse it from whatever polluted that whole thing. And so I have to, so it's much more than the droplet. Whereas I think that ESFJs or sensors in general, like they're more focused on the droplet. So I guess that's also a fancy way of saying like seeing the forest for the trees kind of things. Like, let me just focus on this tree, you know? And if I keep on focusing on this tree, hopefully other people are focusing on the other trees. And if we all focus on our own trees, then we can grow them and we'll have a great forest. Whereas for me, it's like, okay, no, I see this tree, but man, I want the whole forest to be so healthy, so well. And I can't just focus on this tree because I'm too aware of the rest of the forest. So I have to find a way to take care of the whole forest. Does that make sense?
Wow.
I completely relate to that, Denzel. Like from start to finish, how you said that being offended is a choice. That's why I say that NI is like neuro-linguistic programming, because neuro-linguistic programming talks a lot about how everything is like a choice. There's a stimulus and then there's the response. And you have the choice in between there. And I really, really related to when you said that. I also really related to when you see everything as a droplet, a symptom of the ocean. So I also see that. Everything that you see with your SE is a symptom of probably some ocean. And the NI is like, just what is that ocean? What is it? And so it's like always trying to figure out, it's like nonstop. It's always processing there. Where is the ocean? If everything is a droplet, what is the ocean comprised of? Right. It's so abstract because you can't really link it back to an immediate thing, but you have to go back and retrace it all the way to the ocean.
Yeah, I can see an ESFJ being like, you really think that you can clean up that whole ocean? Dude, just focus on the droplet. Like, you handle that droplet, that's great. You know, like we're all focusing on droplets over here. Like my ESFJ sister-in-law, Like, she really like, you know, she means best, but like, you can tell like when she sees me, she's like, man, this guy just really feels like he can save the world, you know, kind of thing. And it's like, I'm just focused on my family and we're helping the world just by being our family kind of thing. And I understand that for sure. But then also because I understand type, it's like, no, I understand why for you, that ideal of like trying to cleanse the whole ocean seems like super, super lofty. And you feel like the best thing to do is to focus on that droplet. But for me, it's like, if I just focus on that droplet, I'm like, for me, it's like, no, I'm wasting my potential. There's so much more that's over here. I just can't do this day-to-day thing anymore. Like, there has to be like a huge end goal that I'm making, that I'm going to like, even if I don't make it to the mountaintop, like I'm going to cover a whole bunch of ground. Like one time I used the analogy of the carrot of idealism in one of my videos, where it's like the donkey that has that carrot in front of them and it's like continuing to walk. The donkey's never going to get the carrot, but the donkey's covering a lot of ground as long as the donkey continues to follow that carrot. Whereas with the sensor, from my opinion, they're way less likely to have that type of carrot in front of them, because they're like, realistically, what I want is just tangible results. Like, and so I don't have this like mountaintop type of things. Like, I want to be able to see tangibly what the results are, and see how I'd be able to like help in that situation. But based off of all of that, Dmitri, like, what do you think?
I mean, I'm sitting back and relaxing and listening to you. But I find it interesting that what you use the analogy about the trees. You said that I would focus on one tree. I think because you're saying that you would focus on all the trees, see how you can make them grow. For me, I would go one by one. You're thinking about the group picture in a way. So for me, I'd want to find out what the source of the problem is, and I'd go one by one to each one of them. So yeah, I guess mine is more of a, I don't know. Mine's more of an individual aspect.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dmitri, how like with sensors, there's a sequential element. So they'll sequentially tackle things.
Yeah.
You talked about going tree to tree. And there's also this element where ESFJs, they have a distaste for presumptuousness that we talked about in Personality Hacker. So the reason why they're not going to try to infer the ocean is because it's a little presumptuous to assume that you can get to the ocean and understand it. Yeah, it's too big. It's like, how can you possibly know that? And it's like, that's unreliable. That's not trustable. It's an abstraction. So I thought that it also had to deal into with the presumptuousness, like the distaste for presumptuousness. Yeah.
And like, because then, which is funny because now J. Cole's in this whole controversy right now as we're making this video. But I compare J. Cole and Drake. Like, I think that Drake is a very great example of an ESFJ who's operating at a very high level. And then J. Cole is a great example of an ENFJ who's operating at a very high level. They're both rappers. And I remember that Dmitri like had hit me up like when I did my celebrity typing series, and he's like, yo, like, oh, you think that Drake is ESFJ? I would have thought that like he was like big picture focused in this sense and everything. And then I explained like when you compare him to like J. Cole, like Drake is a lot more concrete in what he does and what he says. Like he's more of a, I'm just gonna go into, he's just in his like town and he's like, I'm just giving out checks to like the homeless. I'm just doing these like really like practical things and hopefully like that's helping out. But I'm not really gonna like speak out too much about these issues. I'm trying to like do something like a little bit more tangible, a little bit more like close to home, so that way, you know, like people can like I can actually see the difference that I'm making immediately. Whereas with J. Cole, even just 2 days ago, he dropped a song where he's like, dang, like, I feel like I'm not even doing enough. Like, because he's looking at how big the monster that he's trying to tackle is. And it's funny because people don't even tackle Drake, like, for this type of thing. They're not like, why isn't Drake doing this? Because they know that, like, Drake, his thing is more of focusing on the droplets, focusing on, like, you know, stuff like that. So it's like, all right, well, we know what Drake's thing is, but Cole, you supposed to be one of those people that's like attacking the ocean. Why aren't you cleaning the ocean? You know what I mean? And it's like, Cole is like, dang, like this is a really big monster. Like, and I've done so much, but I still feel like I haven't done enough, you know? Right. And so I feel like clearly both types are like very important because we need the detail-oriented person to be able to focus and really like get into all the nooks and crannies and everything like that. But then that also takes time. And while that's going on, then we have like everyone else, like the bigger picture, like it's either like spreading. So we need someone also be able to like maintain or have that vision to clear the ocean and keep the detail-oriented person from like polishing. And then the more they polish, then the more dirty the things ahead gets. So it's like someone has to like come and like sweep it off so the detail-oriented person can like kind of like wipe off the rest of it in a way. That's kind of like how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, and to continue off your ocean analogy, with NI, it can feel like you're always with the ocean. So it's like the big picture doesn't go away. Like when you're going through this seemingly insignificant thing, you can't help but link it back to the big picture. It haunts you. It's there. And that's why J. Cole, it might have like weighed on him to know that he couldn't help everyone, because you can't unsee that big picture. That abstract thing is real to intuitives. It's as real as reality. So it kind of like he feels the weight of the ocean. Yeah. Whereas I think like ESFJs, they're more realistic. So they're like, okay, you can't possibly like fix the ocean in a day. So why are you like tortured over this or like weighing heavily over this? So it's all about like the focus and intention of the person too. Like, does this person carry the ocean with them always? Or does this person tune in and out of the ocean? And that's, I think, a difference between ENFJ and ESFJ.
Yeah, I definitely think so as well. What do you think about that, Dmitri?
Like I said, you guys are all talking about it, so I'm agreeing with you on a lot of sense, especially when it comes to, you know, the J. Cole and the Drake situation. When I talked to you about the Drake, or about Drake being an ESFJ, you kind of opened it up for me. So it's definitely interesting to see the breakdown of when we had a conversation, because you kind of opened my eyes on how like typing is. Because I mean, I've seen ESFJs before, but I didn't think Drake was an ESFJ. You know, I forgot what I had said he was.
Yeah, I think.
What did I say? ENFJ.
Yeah, you thought he was ENFJ.
I thought he was an ENFJ. And and you said at first you thought he was too, and then you changed over to ESFJ, and then he kind of opened my eyes on how I started realizing that through Drake's music, he wasn't trying to. Like, he was trying to bring everybody together. You know, he like, I mean, let's be honest. Every song that Drake comes down with, it's always a hit. Because there's always a dance. There's always some kind of lingo he's got and everything. So we're all just like jamming to it, and everybody gets to it. And guess what happens? It hits the Billboard charts. All the way up there immediately. You know, because he connects everybody to it, and it's just a jam. You don't have to like him or not. You know? You can like his music. You know, that's what he does. He just connects people. You know, I can't stand Justin Bieber, but his music is great. Like, it's always jamming. But I know he's probably not an ESFJ, but I just I like the fact that you guys are using so many analogies and stuff, because I'm following you. I'm just like, I have nothing else to say because you guys explained it so well. So
no,
that's how it works.
No, I definitely get that. And I think that what Joyce said is just like really like a big distinguisher. Like, I really do feel a responsibility for like my territory of people that I have to take care of a lot further than where I think that ESFJ's territory would reach. And that's why I have to speak in a more like abstract term, I guess, because when you speak when you're using a more abstract language or medicine, I guess, for society, then it's more easily, it's kind of like how Jesus used his parables. It's kind of like, oh, I can take like one person in society or one culture can take it one way and it'll heal them that way, while another culture can take it a different way and it'll heal them that way. It leaves more room for interpretation for the way that that culture needs it done. But when you focus in on the details, the more concrete, the more detailed it becomes, then the more specifically tailored for just a certain type of people it'll become. And then it's like, all right, cool. You fix this percentage of people, but what about the rest of this percentage of people?
Right.
And so I think that because I'm so big picture focused, then I naturally also find ways to like, how can I give anecdotes and antidotes for a society that's sick, that needs healing in a fashion that they will be able to digest. And even though I'm giving this like abstract, esoteric type of stuff to them, they can all like take it and it'll work different wonders for different people somehow, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, it's like when you're tuned into the ocean and someone puts a Band-Aid over this ocean, you're like, that's not fixing the ocean. And it's like you still feel the weight of the pollution in the ocean. Mm-hmm. And you're like, everyone's putting Band-Aids onto this ocean, and that's not how you like clear marine life and make it like habitable for the animals. These small actions aren't ultimately impacting the ocean enough to solve systemic problems. Mm-hmm. And it's still there. So then J. Cole will still feel like the weight of that.
Yes.
I think it's very telling, Dmitri. It's very interesting how the whole conversation went down, how you said like you like listening to abstract conversation, but you kind of sit back, take the bystander role when it comes to it. And with my sensor friends, they can actually really, really, really like abstract conversation. But the difference is they tend to like when it gets more and more abstract, when it goes up the ladder of abstraction, the more they're listening and not really participating.
So, I think the reason for that is because it feels like you guys are telling a story. That's what it feels like. You guys are using metaphors and you guys are using the abstraction, and we're just like sitting there. We're following you in a way, and it's storytelling for us. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Actually, that's how it feels. Because it's like when I watch The Witcher, Game of Thrones. They've got all these analogies and all these things that they're talking about with their different accents, but it's a story, and we love it. We just sit there. We're like, oh, we're like watching it and everything, and it's just. When intuitives talk, we just kind of sit back and let you guys talk because we find it so interesting. It's not that we're not following you and we don't know where you're going, but we just like to hear what other people have to say, especially with in-depth conversations outside of the world thinking, and so I find it seriously interesting, especially at the live events and especially now with you guys talking. You guys are going back and forth. And so it's like, it's so much fun just listening to you guys, and so you guys break down the ocean, just the droplets, and then you're over here talking about the trees, and how I focus on one tree at a time, Denzel focuses on all of them, and I'm focused on the droplet, and it's true. It really is, it's the sequential thing for me, me breaking it down in like parts, but the whole picture is what he looks at, so it's just, it's interesting. It definitely is.
That actually makes a lot of sense. And I think that it also has to do with where intuition is in the type stack, because I definitely like I know that my ISTJ friend is not a fan of the way that I speak. She thinks that it's very drawn out and rambly. And so do my ESFP friends and my ESFP brother-in-law. Like one time, like he was like, he said that, you should like give a spoken word for this event, whatever. And I was like, well, my spoken words nowadays tend to go like longer because they tend to be like stories. And he was like, and I was like, and I was just trying to like play around with him. And I was like, I wonder how you'd respond to Jesus today if he was Because Jesus, all he did was speak in parables, stories, and metaphors and everything. Yeah. And there were people like, what is this man talking about? Yeah. And then there was also people that were like the disciples who were like, I don't really know what you're saying, but I want to know, and there's
go with it.
Oh shoot, I get it. You know what I mean? And so, not to compare myself to Jesus, but like, because I knew that me and the ESFP were we were like both Christians, and that was me being like a little bit defensive, but like also like pointing at like, hey, like how would you respond to that? Because like, I guess like for me, growing up, that was a problem that I had, or what I perceived to be like a problem. Like people made it seem as if my storytelling, my parable telling, and all of that, like, that's the way that I express myself, and that's how I can make sense of what's in my head for you. Because I understand it in my head, but it's like, how can I say this in a way that Dimitri's gonna get it? How can I do this? I have to tell the story. And then it's like, oh, so like my ISTJ friend was like, so you couldn't just say this? It's like, I honestly couldn't. I did not know that could have been the point until after I told the story. And now maybe in the future I can tell that, but I feel like I had to like say all of this. Even just now, like just told all of that just to like make the point, it. But because I received so much like backlash, I guess, about like, oh great, here he goes rambling again, or like, something like that, then it really like, it was something I became very sensitive about. Because I didn't like the idea of what I'm saying is meaningless. It's like, no, like, yeah, I'm telling a story, but follow with it. There's a point. There's a point to every single thing that I say. There's a point to every single, story that I'm telling. Like, like I'm not just here wasting my breath. And so when I would get dismissed because I'm telling stories or parables or whatever, and it seemed like I was rambling, then it would kind of like bother me. It's like, oh, can you shorten this? And it's like, no, but that spoken word being 8 minutes is necessary, because if I take out the section of where humanity says her vows to corruption, and Satan is the officiator of the wedding and everything, that's going to take out a very crucial part of the story of what I'm trying to say. And then how will you know what's going on when Jesus runs in and he's stopping the wedding? It's like, wait, why is he doing that? And like, wait, how the heck did humanity even fall in love with corruption to begin with? And, it's like, yeah, you have to follow this story, and everything has its own metaphors and elements to it that'll tell you something. And it's all art in a fashion too, because then it's like, because it's not as concrete, then it's like, okay, oh, I get it, because humanity symbolized this. And when she said this was actually what was happening. I relate to it in this sense. But if I make it like very concrete, if I just make it like simplistic, it leaves less room for us to be able to relate to it. So.
Yeah, so definitely. So NI is really esoteric, and when it paints the picture for people, it's okay, he'll come back. They always come back. So yeah, with NI, my ENFP used to describe like when NI users talk, it's like painting the aquarium for you. Like there's the pebbles there, and there's the seaweed there, there's the fish there. They're trying to, each thing has a purpose in that tank. And if you tell a story, when you take out the water, then these fish won't have water to breathe. And now the fish are going to die in that tank. Like, you need that context of water, so you cannot shorten it. Yeah. So NI user is painting this beautiful aquarium, but sometimes people tend to, hi, welcome back, Dmitri.
So sorry, I don't know what happened. It just glitched out.
It's okay. She always come back. She just knew.
I knew. Yeah, I know. I was gonna come back. I didn't know what was happening though. So,
Dimitri's always where the party is. He has to be here. So yeah, NI users, they paint the full picture in its entirety. So it has to keep in the water, it has to keep in the seaweed. So you understand what we're trying to get at. And I think it's also, what you're describing, Denzel, is not only intuition, but it might be like TE not there, because like TE is like a succinct, like efficient way of doing it. And then the FJ is like, well, I just want to tell you this in this very long-winded way because I have to wait for the thinking to come out. It's kind of like a faucet okay, a faucet, you know, you turn it on first, it might have some dirty water, you have to wait for the clean water to come through. I feel like sometimes feelers are like, okay, I just have to keep saying this until the dirty water gets through so I can get the clean water through, and then you'll understand my point. So the logic comes in like it's a slow dripping process of the logic coming in, but it's like we're trying to articulate it to you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think also like that even can oftentimes be like an example or difference between like NI versus NE, because if we're giving an analogy, like you said, NI will paint the picture. Like if I'm giving an analogy of a house, then I will really focus in on one room, and every single item in that room is going to mean something to give my reason or to give my point. Whereas an NE user, wherever it may be in the stacking, they're going to focus on different parts of the room. Like they'll say like, yeah, this room, and they'll like give you the gist of that room, and then they'll jump to another room or to the kitchen. And so they're like holistically like talking about like the house, the whole house in a way, but like different aspects of the house in a manner. And so I feel like that can be like where like a little bit of the long-windedness could potentially come from. Yeah. And you get that too from like SI users, in my opinion, but their long-windedness comes more from how deeply concrete they're going into things. Like they can really say like I was known out in the same fashion, because it's like they're telling me like what color this certain thing was, and then, you know, like how this thing tasted, and then, you know, like what exactly this person was doing over here in this situation. I'm trying to like figure out like, okay, wait, but do I need that? Oh no, that information wasn't necessary. Okay, this one I have to keep it. And then finally when they say their points, like, oh, okay, so I really didn't have to know what the color of that car was. I thought that was going to mean something later on. But like if I'm telling you what color the car is, then it's like, that's because it's somehow like a point, because I don't usually remember stuff like that. Like my memory for those details is like bad. But the reason why I was able to remember that the car was yellow was because I knew that later on that was going to influence what Dmitri said about, you know, when we had to look for the taxi, and so this, that. So when I'm saying this detail, you should remember it. Whereas like with SI users, they naturally remember a lot of the details. And so when they're retelling a story, then they might, at least from my perspective, of course, tell details that like I would read too deep into, and then by the end of the story, I'm like, oh, I did not have to know that the car was yellow. That didn't have anything to do with anything. It's just something they happen to remember because they're good at it, and I'm not.
Yeah, and that brings me to another difference between the ESFJ and the ENFJ. So I noticed like ESFJs, my boss is one, he'll ask me details about my life to like get us to be closer. And he'll be like, Joyce, how it's school? And then he'll remember something about my school and then comment about that later. And so like with ESFJs, they like to ask you about the little details about you because they're bonding over the little details about you.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, an ENFJ, they might remember it for FE purposes, but they kind of want an NI picture to attach your details to. Whereas the ESFJ, like they sincerely appreciate like the little details about you.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, but one thing that I guess lastly that Dmitri had said was about how like he'll forget names, and I'm the total same way. Like, is that like common for you? Like you don't remember people's names?
It's not that I don't remember people's names. I kind of have to. It's like I call it a two-timer, because you have to say your name twice for me to completely memorize it. Gotcha. And I have to, and for me, it's that SE that comes in where I have to. It's like a mental picture of your face immediately. Once I take a picture of you, and then the second time I meet you, I immediately put your name to your face, and I can remember that for years. For years, even if I don't see you for about 10 to 12 years, I can still remember your name and your face.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah,
go ahead.
I won't remember your name unless if you tell me something important about yourself.
Exactly.
It's not so bad, but like
you have to connect it.
Yeah, like because even as a server, like people, I won't even remember how you look like or your face or anything a lot of times. Like I will remember your essence, which sounds very woo-woo, but it's so true. Like I will remember like the energy that we had and everything, but then it's like, oh, I definitely don't remember your name. And then if your energy wasn't even something like special, then I would remember you. You're just like another person that I just, and I was kind and everything. But then the moment that we like, because I'll have people who come into the restaurant like, and they'll be like, hey, and I'm like, hey,
it's that guy.
For serving them. But then like, there's two situations with that where for some of them, they'll be like, yeah, so that blah, blah, blah theology. And I'm like, oh, this was that one table that we had that deep theological conversation with, and this is that. I didn't remember any of their faces, but I remembered the concepts that we were discussing and everything. And then there's examples where it's like, I didn't even talk much with this table. They just liked how nice I was. But I didn't even really, it sounds bad, but like I didn't even really like memorize or register their faces. So if they can come in and they'd be like new people to me all the time. But if we talk about something like meaningful or like I really get familiar with like something that's attributed to you as a person, then your name all of a sudden like sticks in my head. Other than that, the moment that we meet and shake hands, I've witnessed this happen over like 50 times. Your name goes in one ear and out the other. And then it's not like the end after we've like maybe like talked a little bit. And my mind is like, oh, wait, this is an important person. This is not going to take up memory in your head. And it's like, oh, what's your name again? Gotcha. I'll remember that. You're the person who is studying to be a psychologist and you helped in this sense and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. So you have to have that connection and bond with that person to remember them in a way.
Yeah, or something meaningful. Like I don't really have to like. I guess it could be considered a bond, but like it has to mean something. Like Jamila said that one of the things that bothered her about when I was first becoming friends with her or like dating her was that I asked her questions such as like, "What's your favorite cereal? What's your favorite color?" I didn't ask any of those questions, and I didn't even notice. And then when she told me about that, I was like, "Why does that matter?" No offense, like I don't care what your favorite cereal is. But the questions I did ask were a lot of deep, like metaphysical things. What are your thoughts on this? Like, how do you feel about that? Like, I asked really deep questions, and to her, it didn't really like make sense because it's like you don't even know what my favorite color is, but you want to know, like, what's the biggest lesson that I had to learn the hard way, and like that, like. Yeah, because that's about you.
See, that's different. That's different for me.
I will remember what your favorite color is if you tell me why it's your favorite color. If because it looks nice, it's like, okay. But like for me, like I used to tell people like I like the color red because it signifies, to me, it's always meant leadership. Like the Red Ranger, he was always like the leader of the Power Rangers, and then red is like the first color in the rainbow, and and it's just like bold. And so now it's like, oh, I can remember that's why that's someone's favorite color because that's what it resonates with. But like, that means something. You get what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I tie with that too because the fact that I like to ask those deep questions, but for me, I like to ask the smaller questions first. It's a build up for me. So I'll ask like, what's your favorite color? What do you do for work? And then I like once I guess what it is, I like to establish, the
rapport.
Like the rapport first. I like to establish the rapport first and then ask the deeper questions because I want to see how the connection is. I want to see if there's any kind of separation between us at all. Like, I want to make sure that there's an engagement of conversation before I ask the deep questions. Because if there's no conversation before us, how am I going to make you talk when we get to the deeper questions? Once we get to the deeper conversation.
Gotcha.
This is fascinating because I think we might be defining rapport differently then. I see rapport as having that deep conversation. Like those details won't get you closer to anyone.
Yeah,
like,
right.
But for you, Dmitri, it actually is building rapport to talk about those details. Like I have a story. I knew this friend for a year. Like we're both intuitives and we didn't know each other's pets. We didn't know what our degrees were. We didn't know any, like where we worked. Like we were so oblivious to every detail about each other. But we would talk about like the biggest subjects with each other. It's like, what is the meaning and value of a human life? And that was a normal conversation for us. And this is all about like what you do first. Like we all do everything, but it seems like intuitives lead with that, like wanting that deep conversation as the first foremost thing.
Yeah, that's it. Like me, I am very close friends with INFJ and Pathos on Twitter, and we talked every single day for almost 2 years. And it's like paragraph conversations. And I know a lot of things about her. Like we're very, very close. But I literally did not know until this year that she had a dog. And I didn't even know what type of dog it was. I did not know until this year, like all of these things like about her surroundings and stuff. I don't even think I know what her favorite color is, like not to come to think about it. Like it's like, wow, I can explain her cognition, not just like her cognition as an INFJ, but like her individual way of thinking and like how she might respond to certain things. And she's a very chameleon-like type person. So like all these different things, like I really, really know her. But then like when it comes to like things like, oh, I didn't know that wait, do you have a brother? I don't remember.
It's the little things. It's the little things.
Well, why does that matter unless if he somehow affected a trauma of your past and that's why you're the way that you are? Now I want to know more about that puzzle piece. But if it's just like, oh yeah, I have a brother. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, we all have moms. We all have dads.
Right.
That's not important. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we really don't talk of anything about like our day-to-day stuff. Like there's never a, oh, what are you doing? Just on Telegram, and we don't even end conversations. Like we don't say like, oh, good night or anything like that. Like we're talking concepts upon concepts upon concepts all the time. And yeah, that's a very like intuitive type of dynamic indeed.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it about how like you don't talk about day-to-day things, but you talk about concepts on concepts on concepts. Brilliant, Denzel. That's how it feels like. I know absolutely 0% of day-to-day about my close friends, but I know so much about like what Denzel said, their cognition, like their life path, like what they care about, what their purpose is. I know everything about that.
Yeah. But that's not to go without saying that it clearly is important because like with Mila, she really felt like this was a big deal. Like, why aren't you asking me what my favorite color is? Why don't you know what my favorite style is? And I started to feel bad. And I'm like, dang, why didn't I ask those questions? Like, why did I just jump into all of this, And like to her, it's like, you didn't even care about the little things. So kind of like what Dmitri is saying is like, he's building rapport. It's like, well, let me show you that I'm caring about the little things before I get bigger. But then for me, it's like, let's talk about this. And that itself should let you know that I do care about those things.
Right.
So yeah, that is very interesting though.
Yeah, so I guess we show interest in different ways. Like the ESFJ will show interest into the little details, whereas like the ENFJ will show interest into that like scheme of who you are and that general scheme. And so that's another way to differentiate them. And so thank you so much, guys, for coming on. It was a pleasure to have two FE-Dom males on. This is unprecedented. I think nobody knows about how like FE-Doms look like as guys. So you're doing the public a service. So thank you so much for coming on. And I'll link their links down below for you to check them out. They are very cool, suave, and they make me feel so comfortable. FE-Dom guys. So you should also check them out and see their awesomeness for yourself. Oh,
I just want to ask, because that was one thing that I forgot in the beginning that I was going to ask, since we're both FE-Dom males, like, was that also another element that you think was something we should throw in to talk about? But if it's too late now, then that's also okay.
For sure. We can talk about that too. So Dmitri, what are your thoughts on that? Being a female male.
ESFJ females. And I personally have seen a lot of differences between ENFJ males and ENFJ females, and the same ESFJ males and ESFJ females.
Yeah, when it comes to ESFJ female, an ESFJ female is very interesting. And I've seen actually two unhealthy ESFJ females, where they're really clingy and really needy and just wanting the attention, but they want to please you so hard for some reason, and they can't explain it. Even if you say just like, it's cool, everything's fine, just relax. And like, no, you don't understand. They want to continue to do it. I've dated one and it wasn't great. It wasn't that great, and I just kind of had to back off from it because it was like, am I that way? Like, is that how I work? But then I realized that I don't know, it's just an energy thing. I can't really describe it. As an ESFJ male, I want to make everyone feel comfortable, but I don't want them to feel pressured into anything. And so when it comes to like a very unhealthy ESFJ female that I've seen a lot of pressure into something. But then again, I've never seen a healthy ESFJ female. And I'm sure that I have in my past. I just can't think of one. Gotcha. Because I know, and this is common, but in the Hispanic community, where I was raised in Florida, there's a lot of ESFJ moms. Oh yeah, a lot of ESFJ moms, and I'm sure I can probably name a couple. I just haven't typed them as that, but I can tell you for sure that they're very healthy and they make you feel comfortable. It's the uncomfortability factor that is the unhealthy part in an unhealthy ESFJ. Excuse me. Like they keep throwing themselves at you, and it's just kind of weird, So there's a certain point and a certain limit for me that I don't pass. I want to make sure that everyone's having a good time. If you say you need to back off or there's something going on, I want to try to fix that. Yeah. That's my take on it.
I wonder if what plays into if a person is a healthy ESFJ or unhealthy has to do a bit with attachment style too. So it seems to overlap a bit with the anxious attachment style and the pressuring people. So like when someone is anxious, they always feel like they have to do more to gain your love, and they'll keep giving more and wanting that reciprocation because they're anxious all the time. And so it seems like that might be rooted in a little bit of that too. But Denzel, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, like for me as an FE Dom male, like even Joel, he like when we were at profiler training, like he was like kind of like laughing at me, and he was like, I realized that like you just kind of like sat back and you didn't really like feel a need to like help in this situation or something like that. And I was like, I looked at, I said something like, because I saw what was taking place and I immediately just detached myself from it because I guess almost like what Dmitri is saying, it's like, I know that when I want to take charge, I can. And because I know that when I want to take charge, I can easily do so and I can facilitate it very well, then I like to allow the ball to roll by itself, even if there seems to be like a little bit of havoc. And I think to myself, okay, I can see the end of this. This is going to be a bumpy ride, but I think that we're going to ride this out and it's going to work out well at the end. And I might maybe like throw something here. I'll nudge the bowling ball a little bit just so that I can make sure like it hits all the pins as opposed to taking complete control. But I'm thinking that with FE dominant females, a lot of times, not all of them, but a lot of times, because of unfortunately, like, how men and women have been depicted in the past, and FE is focused on like social customs and everything, then it's like FE dominant females have this like confliction that they have where it's like, well, society's kind of saying that I need to like be silent and, you know, kind of like reserved and like be like more of like just a woman, you know, and I'm supposed to be like more of like the co-pilot and everything. But there's some part of me that's like, no, I need to take charge. I need to do this. And so that conflict can make them become a little bit more aggressive sometimes and assertive in a manner that seems a little bit more forceful. And like, you have to listen to me because I am, you know, this, like, you're going to respect me. And it's like, wait, is anybody here not respecting her? You know? And so, whereas like for men, I guess it's like a privilege, if you will, that because of the past, it's like, all right, well, as an FE dominant male, I already know that, oh, I'm supposed to be seen as like a leader. Like that's what being a man is. And so it's a pressure as well to be the leader. But then what I've had to work on was like being comfortable with like just sitting back, you know, which I have become comfortable with doing. It's like, oh, I don't have to, you know, like it's fine. Like I can take lead when I want to, and I don't have to demand attention. I will automatically like, get it. But it is more difficult for the FE dominant females. And so there's that. And then of course, like connecting, like I've always connected better with women as opposed to men, because when I'm connecting with men, a lot of times there's this like alpha male type of thing, which I didn't get this from Dmitri, honestly speaking. But like when it's like when you guys are like sharing deep things about each other, it's like, why does this guy want to know so much about me? And is he trying to like know this much about me so that he can like see where I'm weak at and then think that he's better than me in some way? Like, no, I'm the big boss over here. And it's like, there's like competition between us, or it's like, oh, is he gay? You know, he's trying to be like too close. And so then you just like, you know, instead get more deep with a female instead. And so that's been like my experience.
I was going to add something. I think for an FE female, I think validation is extremely high for them as well.
I fully agree.
Validation. I think validation is extremely important to us as well, but I don't think it's all the way up there. And I think it's because of what you described. But I think for an FE female, validation is huge.
Yeah. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. When you look at society, FE is looking at society. It's looking at our social roles. And you as an INFJ, Joyce, you're an INFJ female. I'm sure that you can possibly like relate to that. Your auxiliary, it's like, oh, you know, I'm supposed to present in a certain way as a woman, kind of like how like thinker woman, like they have it like worse, you know? And so like you being a feeler woman, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I'm supposed to present this way, but then when that thinker side of you starts coming out a little bit, then it's like, oh, but what if, you know, like this is maybe going against what society wants from me kind of thing. Whereas for me, it's kind of like the reverse. Like my problem is empathy, or like growing up, like men are supposed to be hard and, you know, whatever. And so I was always friends with the females, and they were always talking about the guys who were like jerks, and they loved them. But for me, it's like, I'm too nice. Like I'm too soft or whatever. And it's like, how is this a bad thing? You know? And so then I had to like go the reverse side a little bit and like become a little bit quote unquote more hard. Like, you know, Tupac, I believe that he's an ENFJ. I mean, if you literally looked up a video of him, like when he was younger, then he was talking about like how like people used to say like, yeah, I'm just too nice and everything. And then the second half of the video is him like, man, we don't love these hoes, you know. And it's just like, dang, like, you know, because his FE picked up like, well, this is what it means to be a man. I have to be hard. I have to be a thug. I have to be like, and so that's where like, as an FE dominant male, they can look very different from FE dominant females, because we're looking at what it actually means to be a man, and then our FE is attaching and latching to that. Whereas FE dominant females are looking at what it means to be a woman, and they're latching to that. But then when things conflict, like, well, I don't want to be a hard exterior cold person, then that's when like FE dominant males start receiving like backlash. And then when FE dominant females like, well, I don't want to be like this, you know, like calm, hey, I'm bringing you cookies type of person, but I actually want to impact or something, then that's when people are like, you're stepping out of your place. So it's tough on both ends, but that's one big difference that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fantastic conversation. Dmitri, you mentioned validation and how females tend to want validation more. And I think that's also attached to the anxious attachment style too.
Yeah.
Because I think women, maybe it might be social conditioning, or they just might be slightly more predisposed to needing validation because they have that anxious attachment style. Whereas men, they tend to have an avoidant attachment style. This is a generalization, not everyone, but this is like where the statistics line up. Yeah. And so that seems like a cool thing that plays into it too. Yeah. Any other thoughts, guys?
I think yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being your wonderful selves and blessing me with your FE. I feel very overwhelmed with all of the FE charm and charisma going on here. And thank you, viewers, for watching this far. You are splendid and spectacular. And I'll see you in the next episode, guys. Bye.